Church of God, broadcasting worldwide on the internet.
I can tell by your eyes that you've probably been crying forever.
Yes, Father has been crying for 6,000 years because you're so disobedient.
And the stars in the sky don't mean nothing to you. They're a mirror.
Genesis 1:14, lights will mark days, not phony international datelines that move God's Sabbath to Friday.
Talk about how you broke my heart.
But if I stay here just a little bit longer,
If I stay here, won't you listen to my heart? If I stand all alone,
yes, the obedient Church of God is standing all alone. The only church in the whole world that doesn't move God's Sabbath day, the 10th commandment, to Friday.
in the sky don't mean nothing to you. They're just a mirror.
Don't wait for the sun to go down in half the world. Just want your own way.
Talk about it, how you broke my heart.
But if I stay here
Just a little bit longer. If I stay here, won't you listen to my heart?
We've been bleeding with you for 6,000 years. Generation after generation. And none of the people will follow his every word. Well, the trumpet and saxophone section usher in the broadcast. Bonjour, three France. 8 o'clock in Paris. 1 p.m. on the West Coast, Los Angeles. 4 p.m. New York City. The perfect time for your spiritual feeding today. Learning God's words and only God's words.
If I stay here just a little bit longer. If I stay here, won't you listen to my heart?
Yes, indeed. Week after week and month after month and Sabbath after Sabbath, we bring you the direct words of the Bible that your ministers are hiding from you. In fact, they're hiding Yeshua from you. They're hiding God from you because they refuse to speak God's words. God's words such as you shall worship on the new months. God's words that you shall fast 4 times a year plus the Day of Atonement. Zechariah 8:19. And you shall worship before the Lord on New Month Day, Ezekiel 46:3. They tear that out of their Bibles. And indeed, the test commandment, Ezekiel 20:20, sign of God on you, the Sabbath day, they refuse to follow in half the world. So all of Australia, all of New Zealand, and indeed China and India, not to mention the Philippines, are all worshiping God on Friday. Look, we're here to help you, and we're going to keep at it, admonishing you. And we've got a dynamite service for you today, because today, as you might know, is the day of the summer solstice that was led up to by Sky Father's Day, which was on the 16th, and now it's 5 days later, the 21st. And tonight is the night where they sacrifice children. That's right, they sacrifice children. They burn children. That's what they do. Who are the they we're speaking about? The Illuminati, Satanists, the witches, and the warlocks. And yes, they do sacrifice children, and they sacrifice young maidens, and they particularly like to sacrifice the blondes. You know what happened on December 25th? John Benet Ramsey? The ritual sacrifices, it always has been on those days. That's how serious it is not to celebrate Sky Father's Day. Yet your ministers are complete dummkopf and have you celebrating Sky Father's Day leading up to the summer solstice. And indeed, celebrating Mother Goddess Day, the great feast of Gaia in the springtime. And indeed, Turkey God Day, to Ra Osiris, to the goose that laid the egg that Ra Osiris sprang forth from. That's why you've got a 20-pound bird on your table. That's why the President of the United States pardons a turkey, because it's all occult. We're the only ones that are preaching this, along with keeping the Sabbath day on the 7th day, or else Yeshua HaMashiach would arrive in Australia a day before he arrived in Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives. That's how ridiculous your ministers are to insist on keeping the phony international dateline of 1883. Well, we're here to pull you out of the mud. Today we'll tell you all about the summer solstice. And now we'll tell to you also about what's going on in Iraq. Because nobody knows anything. Your ministers don't know anything about anything. Because we're obedient, God gives us the wisdom. So who's the group in Iraq that's on the doorstep of Baghdad now? ISIS. 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 Does that ring a bell? Do you even know what ISIS was? Goddess? Do you know what ISIS stands for? What they're doing today? What their name in Iraq, what it stands for? Your ministers don't know, or they would realize how serious this is. I'll tell you, I'll give you a hint. I'll give it to you in the broadcast. Got a whole folder full of information here, about 30 pages regarding ISIS, but you know, it's basically, no one sees that it's a pagan god, that it's a demon, but more so than that, what does ISIS mean in 2014? Fair note, write this down. Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. None of your commentators are telling you what it means. It means Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Now this is very, very important because it's ushering in the setup of the King of the South. But the King of the South is much more involved than just this, because we know that Iraq and Egypt and Syria will be severely damaged, and they will be just supporting the King of the South. So this is actually the birth pangs of the King of the South to sort out the nations in the Middle East to set up the King of the South. And nobody knows anything. None of your ministers know what's going on. They don't know that Isis, Queen Goddess, actual in Egyptian religion, she was a great goddess. Now we've got Isis going forth. And they're demons, remember? There's the king of Persia, the prince of Persia. Persia, you know, Iran, standing up. It's going to be pretty rough. And that's leading to the setup of the King of the South. But nobody knows what's going on because they don't even understand the name ISIS. Just as they don't understand Sky Father's Day leading up to the summer solstice. So they don't understand Isis, the goddess behind this latest group. You know, when we've got, you know, Isis, the queen of heaven, you know, you've got Astarte, you've got Isis between the Twin Towers, Semiramis. You pull into New York Harbor, you've got Semiramis looking for, with her torch, looking for the lost penis of her lover. That's why she's got a torch in her hand. We'll tell you all of the truth of what's really going on that you do not hear from your ministers. We'll even tell you about the latest Freudian slip by Bergoglio. Yeah, Pope Francis, better known to me as Bergoglio. Goglio. That's who he is. Well, he made a big slip, a Freudian slip, in his blessing. And no one will tell you about it. And they're trying to cover it up. And I couldn't even find it on the internet. But I know what he said. And I'm just reporting what he said. Give you a hint. In his blessing, he, Bergoglio, used the wrong words in Italian and said, in service of your penis. That's right, he said, in service of your penis. He gave the blessing in service of your penis. I'm not making this up. It was a Freudian slip. Now, we'll go into it with the meaning of the two words, implicitly what he said, because it's being covered up by the media. But I believe that was a Freudian slip, where Pope Francis, Pope Bergoglio, satanic pope, said, in service of your penis, in Italian. We'll give you the exact words, we'll give you the exact sentence, we'll give you the exact information of what he said, just like we've shown you when you play Obama's words backwards. You know, thank you, Satan. Thank you, Satan. We, the Obedient Church of God, are the group that knows what is going on. Yes, Obama said, yes, we can. Had everybody chanting, yes, we can. Play it backwards, and it comes out, thank you, Satan. Thank you, Satan. Thank you, Satan. And if you try to do it with your words, it doesn't work as well. If you reverse your own words, saying the same words that Obama did. But reverse his words, and it comes back. Thank you, Satan. Thank you, Satan. Amazing, isn't it? Well, there are demons at work here. Well, we'll be telling you all about what's going on. We'll also tell you, if there's time, how the world has been stolen by the corporations. The world has been stolen by the corporations. Your politicians are just stooges of the corporations. And anybody who stands in the corporations' ways gets murdered. Just like Kennedy got murdered. Just like Lincoln got murdered. And let me take it all the way back. Just like Julius Caesar got murdered when Julius Caesar was going to issue his own currency. Just like Lincoln got murdered. See, we're dealing with great principalities and spiritual forces of wickedness in high places. That's why we've got the Denver airport so high with its occult signatures all over the place. Oh, and I got a good one for you. You know when it's, how you'll know when it's time to head for the hills also? We know when it'll be time to head for the hills, going when we should flee. But do you want to know another sign? A worldly sign? I'll give it to you right now. When all of the rich bugs' private jets start pulling into the Denver airport to go underground, you know World War III is about to occur. When you see all the rich bugs' jets, private jets lined up on the tarmac, coming in one after another to Satan's throne. Remember, I gave you the sermon on where's Satan's throne? Yeah, in the Vatican, yes, but also in America at the Denver airport. Yes, and there's 40 levels below the tarmac of the Denver airport. Remember, I told you there's 800 underground cities. We're the only ones that know these things and have the guts to speak them out. So welcome to the obedient Church of God that gets the knowledge, gets led to understand these things because we are obedient. And the Spirit of God is given to those who are obedient. Very simple. That's what your Bible says. What is it? Acts 5:32 and a whole bunch of other places. Well, we'll give you all the information that you need so that you can be one of the few. Not the many. There won't be many. It's a small church. It's a small group. You know, many try to enter, but only few. And it's a little flock. A little flock. So that knocks out Bob Thiel, who's doing such a work. That's all I'll say, because he's growing by leaps and bounds. Well, he doesn't understand everything that's going on. So, when the time comes, we'll see all of these other leaders, church leaders, starting to pay attention to what the obedient Church of God is saying. And indeed, if you listen to the sermons of one particular minister in particular, you'll find that he's starting to finally understand the world. When I told him way back in 2007 that the United States is not a democracy, it is a polyarchy of it. And a polyarchy is a chosen group that puts forth two candidates for you to come to vote for them once every 4 years, and then they put all of us serfs back to work. And I've told you that you work 3 hours of every day of your life to pay the Federal Reserve, which doesn't have any, which isn't federal, doesn't have any reserves, and the money goes straight to the city of London, and it goes to the Vatican, and it goes to the Jesuits. Not 1 penny goes to the American debt. You know how this country is really run? Should I tell you this? Do I dare tell you this? Well, we're all going to be up for God's protection, or like the apostles will be slaughtered. So I'll tell you right now, the country is running, the United States is running on the funds from the drug money from the poppy fields of Afghanistan. That's right. That's why we had to go into Afghanistan, because the Taliban was burning the poppy fields. So we had to go in there and stop them. And we also had to go in there so we could put in the pipeline. And we had to go in there so that the corporations could hook the oil reserves in that area of the world, just like we went into all of the other areas of the world, and just like we went into Libya to steal all the gold, the billions of dollars of gold, and just like they had to blow up the World Trade Centers to get, and they took all the gold out of the basement beforehand. Yes, yes, we know what they're up to. We know what they're doing. Want me to tell you something that'll really knock you off your seat? Hang on. This is a double bear note. The gold that is missing is being ingested by the Nephilim in order to keep themselves alive and from contracting the illnesses and diseases. Just like we as humans take silver, as in colloidal silver, and I have never been sick in 20 years since I've been taking colloidal silver. That's right, never been sick. Well, for the aliens, which they aren't aliens, first of all, they are impersonating the aliens, you know, and they're living in Antarctica, and we're the only ones that know that in 1947 there was a war in Antarctica that the United States lost badly and never went back, because that's where the aliens come in on their major portal. That's right, on an Earth portal, magnetic fields. I won't get into all that, but we have got so much information and perspective that not one other minister in the churches of God has, but maybe, perhaps, perchance, they'll realize it. They'll realize it, that the Spirit of God and that Spirit of understanding is given to those who obey, not to those who disobey. So we got a dynamite service for you today. We've got your spiritual admonitions too, and on repentance. We've also got the information on the thousands of guillotines that are now being moved around. There used to be 30,000 guillotines in Georgia, but now there's only 15,000 because 15,000 have been moved up to Montana. Yeah, and there are guillotines in the boxcars. The boxcars that have shackles on them. The boxcars that I told you about in 2008, where the Gunderson Company out of Seattle was manufacturing the boxcars with the shackles on them. And then on the southern end of the spectrum, the Texas Welders Union refused to put the shackles into the boxcars in Texas, because Texas has a bit more spine than Washington, Seattle, Washington. We've been telling you this stuff for years. You know, back in 1972, I was studying vodka Coca-Cola. That's the title of a book, of the interlinkage between the industrialists and the war machine. And indeed, we are a war economy. All of the states in the Union are producing and involved in war materials and war production, and always have been. We are a war economy. And if there's time, I'll tell you about the United States of America, the newest figures out. Where do we rank in the world in quality of life, and peace and security and safety? Give you a hint. We're the worst. We're in with the worst. Newest figures show we're 103 first at the tail end of peace, safety, and security, and economic security. We're the worst, but you don't know that. You don't know that we've been importing all of our physicists, all of our talent since the Second World War, since Operation Paperclip. It hasn't been the American scientists. It has been the German scientists. And it goes back further than that. Way back in 1908, it was determined by the Illuminati, who are running this country, that Americans would be dumbed down so that finally there could be a sliver of elite to rule the working class. And that's what's been happening since 1908. That's why we have the lowest test scores of the world as Americans. And it's done deliberately. It's not an accident. It's done deliberately because the upper class send their children to Oxford and Yale. But the lower class can't because it costs too much. And thank you, rotten Ronald Reagan, rotten Ronnie, who back in, we sang songs about him way back. I sang this song, he's a drugstore truck driving man. He's the head of the Ku Klux Klan. When summer comes rolling around, we'll be lucky to get out of town. He's got a house on the hill. He can play country music till you've had your fill. And he's an all-night player. He's an all-night DJ, but he sure don't sound much like the preacher he says, 'cause he's a drugstore truck driving man. He's the head of the Ku Klux Klan. When summer comes rolling around, we'll be lucky to get out of town. I was singing that back in the 70s. For Rotten Ronnie, who sent all our jobs overseas, so we don't have any jobs anymore. All the manufacturing's gone. And all the advertising on TV, for Toyotas and Isuzus, why do they even allow it? If you want American jobs and American products, why are you listening to advertising for Asian cars? And indeed, why are you buying Asian cars? In fact, I refuse, and have always refused, to own a rice burner. A rice burner. Now, bless their little Asian hearts, they're doing what we let them do. And I'm just calling it like it is. Why are you buying rice burners and then there isn't any manufacturing? And Detroit is a ghost city now. Hello? Thank you, Rotten Ronnie, for sending all our jobs overseas. Thank you, Rotten Ronnie, for selling arms to our enemy, Iraq. Thank you, Rotten Ronnie, for having our hostages kept in Iran. Hey, remember the 30 days, the surprise, October surprise. On the day that Rotten Ronnie gets elected, poof, the hostages are released. How did that happen, eh? Because they cut a deal not to release our hostages. That's what Rotten Ronnie did, and yet one minister just praises Rotten Ronnie. You dumb cup. Rotten Ronnie signed an order way back in 1980 that Christians will be labeled disruptors, and disruptors will be subject to arrest and lockup, confinement and detainment, and indeed execution. Rotten Ronnie signed that order back in the 1980s. Look, I've got a history of knowing what's going on. God's using me to get these words out. And I'm getting these words out now, so if anything happens to me, you'll have these on tapes in all of your houses, and then you can spread it around virally. That this whole world is controlled by the Illuminati, and that I've told you this over and over again, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Democrats will put the money out for the war machine because this is a war economy. You can vote for whoever you want. It doesn't make any difference at all. Like Stalin said, it doesn't matter who you vote for. It matters who counts the votes. I've shown you how the election was flipped all the time. All the time. There's no hope until Yeshua gets back. That's your only hope. So we want to give you some hope. But today, we know exactly what's going on in Iraq. We know exactly what's going with ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. And you know, I was listening to the Obama speech. He's such a oh, you can't talk, don't want to talk bad about our leaders. Okay, so I'll just tell you, I'll just report what he was doing in the speech. During the speech, he used the word ISIS the first time during his speech. Okay, well then his handlers must have put up on the screen a different pronunciation, because if you say the word ISIS, someone with any brain would know that we're talking about Isis, the Roman goddess, who is empowering it, just like the Prince of Persia, you know, of Iran is a great demon. We've got Isis, the demon, the goddess Isis, that's empowering this. So, we've got Obama in his speech, he had said, slip of the tongue, ISIS. Then after that, you never heard him say the word ISIS anymore, because his handlers had put something up on the screen. And then he started pronouncing it differently. Well, we're going to tell you how he pronounced it differently. So we'll keep you looking forward to that. And we will get you out of the mud. We will get you out of the mud from you practicing Sky Father's Day, Mother Goddess Day, Turkey God Day, and being part of congregations that move God's Sabbath Day to Friday in half the world, because just like the poop godly moves God's Sabbath Day to Sunday, your ministers, Bob Thiel, Continuing Church of God, Roderick Meredith, Living Church of God, Triumph Prophetic Ministries, Bill Dankenbrink, Church of God the Eternal, John Brisby, Philadelphia Church of God, Flurry, all move God's Sabbath Day to Friday in half the world. You're going to wake up, because we're not going to let up. God gives us the power and the opportunity. We will preach for our last breath. And then it's on their heads, on your ministers' heads. And it's on your head for following a minister who moves God's Sabbath to Friday instead of waiting for the sun to go down. Because as soon as you fly out of LAX towards Australia, poof, the day jumps ahead. It's magic! It's magic! Well, it's not to be that way. We've got a congregation in Pakistan that God gave us of 200 people that wait till tomorrow for the sun to go down. But Bob Thiel's congregation in New Zealand, and indeed in Australia, already had the Sabbath. Yeah, had it on Friday. That's right, had the Sabbath on Friday. When are they going to wake up? Well, God has raised up the obedient, see the word? Obedient Church of God. And we put up, to make it easier for you to find us, you know, to type in. All you've got to type in on the internet browser now is TOCOG. You want to find the Church of God? type in 2 COG. It's pretty easy to remember. You can also, do a search via the Obedient Church of God. But we don't have money for putting up all the links for all of that. In fact, this week, it was amazing. Amazing. Just the right amount of money came in for us to pay on the same day that our site was going to be taken down for non-payment. The money came in at the last second to pay $600, $599.95 for another year of space on the internet. Now, we can't have all of our 300 sermons up because they take too many gigs of space. But for $599.99, we get 6 gigs of space. Well, all of our sermons, would total more like 60 or 100 gigs. So we can't have them all up, but we have the most recent and the most salient ones up. But there's a lot that aren't up there. But here's the point. The money came in at the last second on the exact same day so that the worldtomorrow.org would not go off the internet for non-payment. Now, we still got a whole bunch of other issues because, as you know, the IRS has taken out $20,000 a year, $20,000 a month away from us. We've been destroyed. So now, we are operating on a hope and a prayer. That's all we're operating on, is a hope and a prayer. So let's hope and let's pray that God keeps supplying our needs. Yes. So therefore, our trust is in God, not in our own strength. And we'll keep bringing you the broadcast and the truth as long as there is breath in our body. And just this sermon, what I just started out with on an intro, you should have a copy of that, and you better hide it somewhere. Put it on a disc, burn it to a disc, save it on a disc, and put it away somewhere. Because then you can know what's really going on in this world. Because we'll be telling you that today on this service, the 21st of June, which is the summer solstice. And we'll tell you everything about what the witches are doing and the warlocks are doing, and indeed what the churches of God did on last Sunday, having Sky Father's Day. Well, now that we've admonished you, we want to enter the throne room. So please, please rise. Face the north heavens where Father is, and Yeshua, and the 24 elders, and the 4 living creatures, and the myriads of angels around the throne. Raise your hands in praise as you enter his throne room with its emerald blue floor of sapphire. Mighty, most merciful, loving Father, you who know the beginning from the end, and the end from the beginning. And as life goes by, you give assistance to those you have chosen from the foundation of the earth. Thank you so much for the funds that came in one day just before our site would have been taken off the internet. Father, our trust is in you. So that's a witness to us that we are going to be cared for and looked after by you. And though you slay us, we vow to obey your every jot and tittle, so we can be one of your disciples, just like all the disciples, with the exception of John, were all slain. Though you slay us, we keep your word forever. Father, be with our brethren in Pakistan, the 200 plus, the 8 of which were murdered, burned alive by a mob of 1,000. Serious, that was back before they knew us. But you protected them, so keep on protecting them, so always put them in the opening prayer. And please inspire the services today, both the hearing and the speaking, and especially inspire the listening on the videotapes and on YouTube channels, that people are listening so they can understand what is really going on, because no other minister, no other preacher is stating what we're stating. So please, bless your words as they go out. And as you bless the words, call in that little tiny flock. So now, Father, we turn this service over to your hands and ask it all in Yeshua HaMashiach's holy righteous name, our soon arriving King of the world. Amen. Yeah, pretty good to work for a king of the world. How about a king of the universe, Father? Doesn't get much better than that. And you're the little flock. There won't be a big flock. And the bride has made herself ready. So remember, I've told you there's a difference between the bride and the guests. There's going to be a whole bunch of guests. But there's going to be few for the bride. Because the bride has to be spotless. Spotless! Yeshua is not going to marry a soiled bride covered in spots and stains and filth. Yeshua is not going to marry a spiritual whore. He's going to marry an unspotted bride. Now, you're preparing your wedding garment. I'm not going to give a sermon on this one, but there's another group where they have to be given a clean garment. Now, you're preparing a garment. The guests get a garment handed to them. That's why the gentleman was thrown out of the marriage supper, because he didn't put on his garment that was handed to him. And he definitely didn't prepare his own garment. And yes, we are saved by grace through faith. Now, your ministers don't even understand. Mainstream Christianity doesn't even understand what grace is. Put it down. Write it on your wall. It's a good idea. Put up a poster on your wall. Grace. Bear note. When I say bear note, that goes in your special book, all you new listeners. Grace is a limited period of time to repent in. Grace is not licensed to sin for the rest of your life. Now, if you're doing your best and you slip and fall, you're covered by Christ's blood. But on days of unleavened bread, right after you're washed clean, which, by the way, we are the only church in the world that understands that you take the Passover 19 minutes before the 15th starts, so that by the time you've read your scriptures, and it's be 5 minutes or 2 minutes before the start of the 15th, you enter into the days of unleavened bread, pure and spotless, washed in Christ Yeshua HaMashiach's blood. And then you start examining yourself. That's how it's done. And you also celebrate the Lord's dinner in remembrance of Him. Yes. Then 2 days later you have the Passover to apply the blood of His sacrifice on you. We're the only ones who understand. How believe we say that? Because we're the only ones that practice the Lord's dinner and then the Passover. Because the Lord's dinner was a going away dinner. It was not the Passover. And Yeshua did not change one jot, not one jot, not one jot of His Father's law, or else you would not have salvation, because He had to fulfill the law. But your ministers will not follow their Bibles, and yet, year after year, month after month, just like paying the poop. And I know Catholics, I know Catholics from before, business, and they just say, well, we were let God sort it out. Yeah, well, when you're in the tribulation, when you're not in the place of safety, you'll be thinking twice, won't you? It'll be too late then. Too late. Too late. Really don't want to say it. But you've been warned. Well, now that we're in the throne room, let's give our praises to God. Yes, indeed. There's one particular psalm I want to sing, Psalm 118, where it has, "Open the gates of righteousness, where all the righteous enter in." Now we'll sing that song as the third song, but I want to tell you where this is heading. Open the gates of righteousness, where all the righteous enter in. In other words, in page 89 on the old hymnal, worldwide hymnal, "Trust not in princes nor in man, but better far to trust in God." Because a lot of you are, thinking the United States is going to pull out of this mess somehow. It's not going to pull out of this mess. Your leaders are deliberately crashing the United States into a wall with China and Russia in order to bring in the New World Order. And they're fully prepared to do that. That's why they got their underground bunkers. And I got a name for them. Yeah, bear note. Bunker bunnies. Bunker bunnies. Let me tell you a little bit. All the thieves and robbers, when they're starving, are pretty ingenious. And the thieves and the robbers will be stealing heavy equipment to dig you out of your bunker and get all of your food. That's why Father says, flee to the hills. Flee to the hills. He didn't say hide in the ground. He said flee to the hills, so that they can't get you because you're mobile. You're mobile. And indeed, you will be protected in a place of safety. I wonder where. Well, I think the Bible tells you to flee to the mountains. Yeah, the mountains. The mountains. Well, where are we located? Answer. Matthew's Mountain. What's across the street from us? Mark's Mountain. Now, did it say flee to the mountain singular? Or did it say flee to the mountains? That's a whole sermon right there. Yeah. We'll tell you more about that. But first, we want to give Father our heartfelt praises. So turn to page number 82. Oh, give thanks and praise the Eternal. And remember, this is the fruit of your lips. This is your living sacrifice. Sacrifices have not been done away. It is now the fruit of your lips. And one particular minister is now preaching that the sacrifices haven't been done away and it's the fruit of your lips. Well, that's okay, because he's learning. He's learning. So, here's our beautiful 1934 hymnal. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. Yeah, we got 3 cameras working now. We got our $100 replacement camera, and we fixed the third camera, and the second camera we also fixed. Oh, you know what they want to fix the camera? One company, well, I'll tell you who. Well, I guess we got to be careful on naming companies. All right, but anyways, one company wanted $350 to fix the camera, and this was, a regular price for this regular big company. It wasn't a little rip-off company. And another one wanted $240. So we had to fix them ourselves. The only problem is there's only so much time in the day. Like, we can fix stuff. That's how we're going to survive in the place of safety. In fact, we're going to need, all the different tradespeople and welders and the equipment. And we're not going to get into all that, but we've got to know how to fix things. Yeah, and the angels will help us too. So let's give thanks and praise the Eternal. Page number 82. And sing out, because this is the fruit of your lips, your sacrifice. sang out. Now, using the word out here, when Israel out of Egypt went, turn over ahead a page. Yes, when Israel out of Egypt went. Is that important to you? Page number 86. You are Israel. Remember, I preached it over and over and over again. 40 years in the spiritual wilderness. 2015 is coming up. Yeah, the next blood red moon. And I told you that the first blood red moon came up at 7 o'clock in the evening. It was early, and it only covered the United States area, North America, and that meant that time would tarry into 2015. And I told you that on the night of the service of the blood red moon. I told you it would tarry, and nothing happened, has it? Oh, but it's heating up in Iraq. It's heating up. They're on the doorstep of Baghdad. I've got to stop talking so I can tell you about that. When Israel out of Egypt went, Psalm 114. Sing out. Hope that encourages you. 40 years in the spiritual wilderness physically, and 40 years, in the spiritual wilderness today. And you just sang out words that I humbly will interpret for you, where you said, skip to and fro, what ails you, that you flee, O Jordan, that you turn back. Tell you, there could be a pole shift, P-O-L-E shift. Guess what'll happen then? The basins of the oceans will slosh. The basins of the oceans will slosh, and everybody below 1,500 feet and below 900 feet could be wiped out. Yeah, these words mean something. Presence of the Lord, pools of water bring. He brought pools of water before. But watch out, if I were you, I'd live nowhere on the coast in these end time days. Because if the poles do shift, and they do shift every 100 and some thousand years, then the oceans will just slosh like a bowl and wipe out all the coastal areas below 900 feet. And luckily, Matthew's Mountain, we're at 1,500 feet, and then down below we're at like 1,000 feet. But these words all mean something. The Bible is so deep, because we're talking about the end time, and the mountains like lambs, and the hills skip to and fro. So what do you think the oceans are going to do? All right, now that we've given you more understanding of what you're singing, let's just give thanks to the Lord. 89, Psalm 118. Blessed be his name. So you want to bless his name. So tell him, blessed be his name. Remember I told you, if you have children, and your children love you so much that they sing songs to you, your heart will turn to them. So I want you to sing out to Father, so his heart will turn towards you. That's how important it is for you to sing out. Give thanks. Oh, give thanks unto our God. Blessed be his name. His mercy shall always endure. His kindness never fails. Let his royal confess to God. His mercy always shall endure. Let your household now repeat. His mercy never fails. I call upon the Lord my God. In distress I cried. He answered me and set me free. Put your confidence in God. With the eternal on my side, why should I fear what men can do? Trust not in princes nor in men, better far to trust in God. All nations compass me about, compass me like bees. But the eternal is my strength, in his name I cut them off. Open the gates of righteousness, where all the righteous enter in. I shall not die, but there shall live, and shall tell of all his works. Oh, give thanks unto our God. He has answered me. He my salvation has become. He achieved the cornerstone. He by the builders was refused. He was rejected by you. God is the Lord who showed us light. Blessed be the name of God. He was rejected by his own. He was rejected by the offshoot churches of God, who refused to keep God's Sabbath day in half of the world, who refused to keep God's new month day, Ezekiel 46:3. Who said that? The Lord said that. You shall worship ... on new month day. And indeed, 4 fasts of the Lord coming up in July. Well, not all of them, just one of them's coming up, and it's only a one-day fast. It's no big deal, but it's very important to God. And we've got correspondence from one of our members, Ozelia Ruth, and she's got an excellent article, if I find it in the maze of papers that I got here, on fasting, and how fasting for one day is so beneficial. But fasting for 3 days or 4 days doesn't work. It isn't as beneficial. It's the one-day fast. It's the one-day fast. Well, it's somewhere in my papers here. And as usual, I've got so many papers. So all please be seated, and we'll see what God leads us to tell you about His Word, about His ways. And we're going to have to wing it here. Check the cameras. One moment, please. With these 3 repaired cameras, I have to check that everything is copacetic. And blessed be the Lord. Hallelujah. They're all running. And why do you need 3? Because tapes wind up in jam. Digital cameras. There's 1 digital and there's 2 cassette cameras. And the digital one cut off last time. That's why you have 1 sermon that cuts off early. But you got the main message out of the sermon, but the digital camera decided it wanted to cut out. So I had to reformat it and put in a memory card. You know, the regular camera internal memory was like 6 gigs. And the way the digital camera works, it takes over 6 gigs for 2-hour presentation. So you need like at least a 20 gig memory card, or 40 gig if you can afford it. But now we fixed that. So that's why I had to get up and look at the cameras to see that everything is copacetic and running properly. So, going through the folders here and seeing what I should pick for your spiritual feeding today. Now, we've got one of these sparklers, we call them sparklers, from Ozelia Welling. And by the way, we are Netzeri. We are not, as you would maybe like mainstream Christians, because mainstream Christians are pagan, just calling themselves Christians because they celebrate Sky Father's Day, Mother Goddess Day, Turkey God Day, and indeed some celebrate Christmas Day, and some celebrate Easter Day, Ishtar, the goddess of sexual love, where you're rolling eggs on the White House lawn, and the Feast of Lupercalia, you know, Valentine's Day. Well, she starts off as, Dear Netzeri brother, your discernment between what is fact and what is fiction is a gift of God. That is one reason why I cling to your every statement and appreciate what I can learn. And oh, how I love to cherish every sermon. Well, she goes on to ask a question about the 3 days and the 3 nights. And just for the new listeners out there, the 3 days and 3 nights are inclusive reckoning, not exclusive reckoning, of 12-hour periods. It's portions of a day and a portion of the night. So you had 1 night, which was Thursday night, and then you had Friday night, and you had Saturday night. That's 3 nights. Then you had 3 days. So you had your first day, which was Thursday before sundown, as the portion of the day, inclusive reckoning, after 3 p.m., after the 9th hour, when his blood drained out of him, his last drop of blood after his horrible scourging. And it was more than 40 lashes, because the Romans were known to give over 100 lashes each time, just about to kill you. But the Jews had the law of 39, less 40 stripes less 1, but not the Romans. That's why Yeshua bled to death as a sacrifice on the tree. Well, he was crucified and died on the 9th hour on the tree. bleeding to death, and his blood dripped out, down onto the ground. And then at the time of his death, the moment of his death, there was a great earthquake. That great earthquake cracked the ground underneath his body where the pool of blood was, and that pool of blood drained down 20 feet through the crevice onto the mercy seat of God where the Ark of the Covenant was, and still is. And no one can touch that Ark, because the 6 Levites that went in to move the Ark were all killed by the angels that are guarding the Ark. See, God's in control. God's in control. So we know that of which we speak. Now, the man who had made the discovery, he had fallen off the rails. How do I know that? Because I watched one of his presentations in his later life before he died, and he gave the 2-fingered sign of Baphomet. So he got corrupted. What's the 2-fingered sign of Baphomet? That's the sign that all of your politicians give. Here it is. There it is. The 2-horned goat sign. That George, I have it on tape, George Bush giving that sign. Bill Clinton giving that sign. Hillary Clinton giving that sign. Indeed, Ahmadinejad giving that sign. Gaddafi of Libya giving that sign. All of the Illuminati give that sign. And indeed, all your for Sarkozy of France, all your leaders are Illuminati. Harper, he's a good one of Canada. Yeah, he's a good one of Canada. He gives that sign. You see, they like to mock us and put it out. It's called lesser magic. That's why George Bush held My Pet Goat, the book My Pet Goat, upside down. If I get an open folder, I'll hold it like it was a book. He held it upside down. So he's holding the book like this, and you invert it like that. And that's a sign of Baphomet, to put it upside down. And then he had the children cast a spell on the United States. Why isn't that on your news? This should be front page news. Kite must hit steel. Kite must hit steel. Kite must hit steel. George Bush had the children chanting that as the planes were hitting the buildings. That is what's really going on in the world, but you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue. And yes, of course, 9/11 was an inside job because the buildings fell at free fall speed. Down in 7 seconds. That is impossible to happen in physics unless they are detonated into powder. And indeed, why did you have everybody covered in dust? Because the building was blown up and the concrete was shattered into powder. Everybody was covered in dust. The media doesn't tell you anything. And yes, there were explosions that were heard, but those were all covered up. Same thing with World War II. Pearl Harbor, deliberately allowed, put on the newest young operators, radar operators, and told the operators, no, that's just a flock of birds. That isn't the Japanese coming in. When the young newbie radar operators were saying, we're being attacked, we're being attacked, we're being attacked. They said, no, it's just flocks of birds. Don't worry about that. Then the radar operators, the newbie ones, even said, we don't believe it's a flock of birds. They said, oh, well, we're doing a military drill. We're doing a military drill. Well, guess what happened on 9/11? They were doing another military drill on 9/11. Yeah. What happened in the bombing in the train station in London? They were doing a military drill. What happened in the Boston bombing? They were doing a military drill. So that if they get caught, they can say, oh, well, it was just part of the drill, just part of the drill. You don't realize how satanic this world is. It's totally satanic from head to toe. And it's a big card game. As the Satanists are playing their card game, and like at any big-time card game, sometimes one guy will shoot the other guy. Oh, they're all friends, yeah, but they all belong to the same club, but sometimes one guy will shoot the other guy. That's what happened in Libya to Gaddafi. He was taken out because he started to go on the gold standard, so they had to take him out. Indeed, that's what happened to Kennedy. They had to take him out. That's what happened to Lincoln. That's what happened to Julius Caesar. This all goes back. And someday I'm going to give you the full sermon on how it ties in with the beast power of the 13 bloodlines, and they're all Romans. Romans. So you got this nonsense that the beast has to be the European power of the 10 nations. It's not going to be the Europe of 10 nations in Europe. It's going to be a Pan-American Union. It's going to be an Asian Union. It is going to be the European Union. It's going to be the North American Union. It's going to be the African Union. We haven't got time to tell you all that, but we understand what's going on, and we've got the truth to tell you when it's time for you to go and flee. So, I haven't got time to read any more of Ozelia Welling's letter because there's 2 other letters that she's got somewhere in this stack. Look, one of them's peeking out here. Yeah, she's a very good writer when she sets her mind to it. Yes. So, let's see what she had written here. You see, God's in charge. So, remember that Dick Armstrong died prematurely. Well, Ozelia Welling, I believe, had talked to the driver of the car that Dick Armstrong was killed in. So she writes here, I'd received this sparkler from Ozelia Ruth on July 7th. Dick Armstrong's glorified God's purpose. Now, the reason I'm reading this to you is so that if anything happens to me, you don't worry about it. No, just like you couldn't understand what happened to Dick Armstrong, I'll just tell you what happened to him. He was killed because if he wasn't, there would never have been any Tekach to set up a Laodicean church, because Dick Armstrong would have kicked Tekach's rear. And indeed, Dick Armstrong would have kicked Ted Armstrong's rear. So Ozelia writes, Jack Armstrong, the All-American boy, was a 15-minute radio broadcast that I was privileged to listen to when I arrived home after school in the 1940s. Late in 1958, I lived in Corpus Christi, Texas, where I met Dick Armstrong from the Worldwide Church of God when he was touring the southern states on a baptizing tour. Mr. Dick Armstrong spoke to a group of Seventh-day Adventists, so I attended his lecture and then let him bless my 2-year-old daughter. Now remember, this is 1958. Dick Armstrong had love and compassion for those he ministered to, and he would one day be the leader of a large ministry when his father, Herbert W. Armstrong, would step down from the leadership of the Worldwide Church of God, headquartered in Pasadena. That was the only time I met Dick Armstrong, even though I moved to Southern California about 4 years later. In San Diego, I talked to Don Billingsley, who was the driver of the car Dick Armstrong used on his baptism tour in 1958. Now, goes on to say he never made it home to his wife Lois and their son in Pasadena because of the serious car wreck. The accident occurred on July 23rd, 1958. So this is an anniversary, this being coming up on July 23rd, when poor Don Billingsley, the driver, fell asleep at the wheel, and a large Cadillac crashed into them head-on, literally shearing off the right side of the car where Dick Armstrong was sitting. Now, Dick saved his life by instantly lunging over close to the driver, Mr. Billingsley. Otherwise, Dick Armstrong would have been cut in two immediately. Now, unfortunately, continues Azealia Welling, Dick Armstrong's body was badly damaged with broken bones and body organs being shoved out of place. He died on July 30th, so he lived 7 days. But before he died, he had an abiding premonition. Listen to this. That he was going to be called on to glorify God as a martyr by violent death. That he had been mentioned to his wife, that had been mentioned to his wife by him several times. Now, writes Azealia, we wonder how Dick Armstrong's death would glorify God when the Worldwide Church of God was witnessing to people around the world and growing in membership and prospering greatly. After Herbert Armstrong's death in January 1986, the new leadership under Joseph Koch changed all the doctrines and changed the name. The Worldwide Church of God was changed to Grace Communion International, GCI. And in 2014, the buildings on Ambassador College campus, now in 2014, are being torn down, so that the Worldwide Church of God has disappeared. She writes, if Dick Armstrong had lived to become the leader of the Worldwide Church of God, possibly spiritual growth of the members would not have been curtailed and errors in their doctrine maintained rather than corrected. 1 year after Herbert Armstrong's death, Triumph Prophetic Ministries did bring understandings of God's Bible truth for 21 years. Now I'll interject here, I was the one who wrote that ad celebrating 21 years of preaching the gospel. But I'll interject, sidebar, Dankenbrink stopped repenting. He stopped repenting. He wanted to continue Sky Father's Day when I've shown him that Sky Father's Day, and there's an article on our site, it's about 17 pages long, that is totally pagan. So God couldn't use Dankenbrink anymore. But for 21 years, and there was one day to the year, I also written in the article that Dankenbrink used, let's put it politely, that there was 1 year from 1986, the death, what was it, January 16th, 1986 of Mr. Armstrong, to the day of 87, January 16th, 87. Well, why was there 1 day? 1 year. 1 year. Answer. Because in Jewish tradition, there is 1 year of mourning for a fallen leader. So that brought in January 1986 to be the start. And guess what happened in 2007 when Bill Dankenbrink refused the rediscovered truth about the pagan days that I handed him in an article of 17 pages, and indeed other articles on Pentecost and other matters of great import. Here's what happened. He rejected it. So he couldn't be used anymore. Guess what that started? Do the math. 21 years from 1987, I'll do it from the beginning, 1986, 1 year of mourning, to 1987, then 1987 to 2008, when I was disfellowshipped, then 2008 to 2018, the 10 days of awe, which are like the 10 days that run from, you have the Day of Trumpets, then you have 10 days later, the Day of At-One-ment. See, there's a space, 10 days of awe. This is what the Romans 9:28 work is that you're seeing before your eyes as the obedient Church of God. We are the Romans 9:28 work. Well, she writes, 21 years, then God raised up the obedient Church of God to bring in rediscovered truths and to correct the errors, and became the Romans 9:28 short work. While hundreds of offshoot church movements have continued with the errors of the teachings of Herbert W. Armstrong and the errors of the teaching of William F. Dankenbrink. She writes, God is being glorified since the death of Dick Armstrong in order for God's purpose to be accomplished. So, since some of you had concerns about my demise, which I'm here to tell you I'm still here, you know, rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I think W.C. Fields said that. Well, if anything happens to me, it's all part of God's plan. But I am speaking out as long as I have the breath in me, and that's why I'm giving you the truth of God's plan. Ergo, Dick Armstrong. So Dick Armstrong has a place reserved for him, you know, in the 144,000, but he had to be taken out of the way so that the period of testing in the spiritual wilderness could continue. And that is to give you confidence in God's plan that you couldn't see that. Because you always see prophecy and events in retrospect after they've happened. So I don't want you to worry about yourself or myself. It's all in God's hands, but I want you to pray for your protection and my protection so that we can see Yeshua arrive in the clouds and that we can take on Poop Gog Leo. And then he names himself Francis. Like a Francis of Assisi. What a joke. Here's the point. It's all in God's hands, just like it was with Richard Armstrong. And your life and my life is in the hollow of God's hands. Now, just to let you know that Ozelia Ruth is quite prolific in her writings. Well, got another sparkler from her, but we've got so much information we'll save it for later. But here it is, another sparkler from her. She's a good writer. Now you want to know what is going on in the world, okay? How we're living in chaos, what's going on in Libya. But first, I promised you to tell you how the King of the South is being set up. But what others don't understand, you see, they're all looking at these events. And, you know, the latest update that I'd seen about 4 hours ago, they're knocking on the door of Baghdad. ISIS is knocking on the door of Baghdad. Who's that knocking on the door? Couldn't be opportunity. Opportunity only knocks once. Yeah, we've got to keep it a little bit light here. This is ISIS. at the door of Baghdad. And it's all planned out. It's all planned out. So, remember I told you what ISIS stands for. And your broadcasters, your news anchors, your Illuminati news anchors, you know, they're all part of the 6 corporations. You don't get any news. In fact, you're being programmed. You're not listening to programming. I've told you this. Don't you watch that television anymore. And God wiped me out financially. So, you know, my television bill, months ago, before I was wiped out by the IRS, the Dish Network bills were like $270 a month. Because I had every country. I had Israel, so I got the news directly from Israel. And I got the news directly from all the other countries of the world. Well, now I'm getting it all directly off the internet. But guess what's happening on the internet? Just so you know, the internet, news items are being taken down all the time. Because I'd see them there one week and then they're gone and I can't get them again. It's all being censored already. Here's the point. Don't watch television because of the flicker rate of the television. You are being programmed, you are being mesmerized, and you are being entertained. You want to be entertained? You come here and listen to the broadcasts of the Obedient Church of God. I was an entertainer. That's a pretty good one. You have to be a good one in order to stay employed. Yes, God's using that ability. Now, He's also using my humble insights, the 21 years of Bill Dankenbrink, where I've written out that article for him that was in the Prophecy Flash, along with other things that were, well, it doesn't matter whether I get credit for it or not. The point is, we're all growing in grace and knowledge and repentance, and in order for you to understand, you've got to tune into the Obedient Church of God like some ministers are, because now they're understanding that this whole world is just a ruse of a big card game going on by a bunch of Illuminati Satanists, and it doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all part of the Illuminati. All of this has been planned out in 1776 by Satan and Albert Pike, writing it down for the Hegelian dialectic to bring in the First World War, Second World War, Third World War, and to get rid of the czars of Russia so that you could have a communist system that they could put together against the alleged Christian system so that they could have the Third World War. Because if they had the czars of Russia, then they couldn't have had the Third World War. It goes deeper than that. Like I said, I read Vodka Coca-Cola back in 1972. You know, 82, 92, 2002, 2012, 22 years, 42 years ago. So back to ISIS. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Also, the goddess in the ancient Egyptian religion. And remember, you've got the goddess Ishtar at New York Harbor looking for her lover's penis. That's why she's got a torch in her hand. And it's all satanic. And you know that Washington, D.C. is laid out in a satanic occult sign, hexagram. And you know, I've shown you the pictures that the Israeli court building is totally satanic, and I've shown you that all of the buildings, government buildings with these domes on them in the United States, are built mimicking the pagan temples, and I've shown you that where Obama spoke from mimicked the altar. And I can go on, but we got to get into what's going on right now. I got to check one of the cameras. One moment, please. And it's just humming along there. It's just humming along, so I don't have to restart it or nurse it. So let's tell you here. Things are satanic all around you. Remember I mentioned to you that you work for 3 hours a day for the Illuminati. Because not one penny goes to the American government. And indeed, in the Canadian government is exactly the same. The Bank of Canada is not owned by Canada. It's a private corporation, and the money goes out of Canada to the city of London, where it in turn is forwarded to the Vatican and to the Jesuits. And you do the research, you'll find that out. So, guess what? I also discovered, because it's satanic all over the world, not only is Iraq being taken over by ISIS, Canada has judges and a whole judiciary that is satanic. And guess what Canada has named its immigration department? Guess. Bet you could guess. ISIS! The whole system's satanic around the world. Why would Canada name its immigration department ISIS? Because they're a bunch of Satanists, and they got to use their lesser magic in order to cast their spells on us. That's why George Bush had 9/11. My pet goat, reading it upside down with the children chanting, "Plane must hit steel." Well, they used the vernacular kite, which is a radio-controlled plane. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I've been trying to tell you for weeks. They've got little bots and mini bots developed now that will give you vaccinations. If the bot gets into your house, flies into your house, and it's about the size, under the size of a thimble, under the size of a thumbnail, and it could prick you with an inoculation of a virus. That's right. There are leaders dying of cancer. And these are leaders that oppose the United States. It's amazing that they die of cancer at age 54. Yeah, amazing, isn't it? Like the president of Venezuela dies of cancer at 54. Yeah. Well, we haven't got time. Back to Canada here. So you've got the Canadian Immigration Department now calling itself ISIS. No coincidence. What does it stand for? Immigrant Settlement and Integration Services. How long did it take them to figure that one out so that they could name, an honorable Canadian institution under a satanic god's name? But none of the people know that. It takes the obedient Church of God to be led by God to know that Canada has ISIS, Immigrant Settlement Integration Services. Yeah. Remember Iraq, eh? Operation Iraqi Liberation. What does that spell? Oil. O-I-L. Operation Iraqi Liberation. Well, that was so obvious they had to change it. But that is what is known as lesser magic. And they do that deliberately in order to gain power over you. They always broadcast. That's why you've got the Hunger Games going on TV now. So that they can put the magic over you and laugh at you when you are starving to death, which we all will be in 3 years before the Great Tribulation starts, as it leads up to it. And please hunker down before July 1st, because on July 1st, all of the funds in all the banks will be rebounced back to the United States, because none of the international banks will accept the American funds, and that'll start the fall of everything. And on top of that, silver is going up now. Now, God has deliberately wiped me out, because even in my business, I had silver, which had to be sold to survive, and silver had gone up now, like in the last day, it's gone up like $1. And if you buy it in like 500 coin boxes, That's how they sell it. You can go to Kitco, KITCO.com, and you'd want to buy the Canadian Silver Maple Leaf, because it's it's 4 nines pure, which means 0.9999, and though the American Silver Eagle costs more, it's only 0.9992 pure. So you want the silver Canadian one that's 4 nines pure. Long story short, I got wiped out because I had so much my silver in order to survive and not starve to death. So I've got nothing now. So I've totally got to rely on God. Here is the point. July 1st, you're going to see everything going up in price and price and price. And in some places, gas is nearly $4 a gallon now. But it'll be $10 a gallon before 2015. And right now, good milk is $10 a gallon. Yeah, you can't don't buy regular milk, because there's so much hormone in it and genetically modified products in it that it kills the 3rd generation of mice die if you drink regular milk. You've got to get organic milk, or you are putting little holes in your stomach, and you will notice that your orifices will be leaking. And that means, your excretory orifice, your anus will be wet because of the GMOs and the hormones in your food. But the mice die after the 3rd generation. Let's get back on to ISIS here. So no one knows what's going on with ISIS, the great goddess that is being empowered in Iraq. And they haven't shown you the seriousness of it. I got a picture here of Iraq, and I've got the picture of Baghdad. They're on the doorstep of Baghdad. I'll give you a picture just so you know how serious it is, but it hasn't been shown to you on the television news. See, all the way down from the top, northern Iraq, all the way down to Baghdad has been taken over by ISIS. The whole area, from the top to the door of Baghdad, half the country has been taken over by ISIS, all the way to Baghdad. Now, why is this important? Answer. Because Iraq, Iran, and Egypt are going to be severely damaged by this and won't be actively in the King of the South. Now, all your ministers are, thinking that the King of the South is forming right now. No. 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 This is just the preliminary to take out Iraq and Syria to be severely wounded, Iraq severely wounded, and Egypt, indeed, to be severely wounded. So we're living in some interesting times. Now, if the USA goes into Iraq again, it could end very badly for the USA, because now we're dealing with demons. We're dealing with ISIS, a demon. Just like the Prince of Persia, Iran is a very powerful demon. We're dealing with ISIS. So we have fighters affiliated with the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Remember, that's ISIS. And they've seized control of the biggest oil refineries on Wednesday this week. Now, Obama has been asked to respond with airstrikes, but they're hesitating. They're hesitating. Now, this is the end of Iraq, as we know it. Serious. And it'll lead to the destruction of the total, if it isn't destroyed enough, by the sanctions for 10 years that Poppy Bush put in 1990, where millions of children starved to death. What abuse, what horrendous terror the United States perpetrated on Iraq, starving the children to death for 10 years. But we won't go into that one. But ISIS leader, who's ISIS's leader, is leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. ABU. Second word. B-A-K-R. Third. Lowercase a. Lowercase l. Dash. Uppercase B. Then A-G-H-D-A-D-I. Warned. Warned Jews and Crusaders. They warned that there better not be any American attack. There'd better not be any British attack. There better not be any French attack. Specifically, in particular, warned the British, American, and the French. Why? Your ministers don't understand this. Answer. Because the Brits are Manasseh, the Americans are Ephraim, and the French are Reuben. So this is biblical, folks. The ISIS, the pagan goddess, warned Ephraim, warned Manasseh, warned Reuben, don't you dare go in to fight against the goddess Isis, or there'll be repercussions, retributions inside the United States. Remember, I've told you there are 1 million Arabs in the United States, and they will rise up. Their allegiance is to their Allah, their moon god, and they will rise up inside the United States. Now, I've got many pages here on ISIS and what's going on in Iraq, and it's just happened this week, remember, since Wednesday, and they've taken over half of the country. We've got Peshmerga military direct traffic at a Kurdish checkpoint. Yes. We've got traffic from Mosul at Kurdish checkpoints. We've got Iraqi children carrying water to their tents at temporary displacement camps. Yes, you can pray for the Iraqi people and the Kurdish people up in the north. Pretty serious. Got men boarding military trucks to join the Iraqi army at the main recruiting centers in Baghdad after authorities urged Iraqis to help battle the insurgents. It's tearing what's left of Iraq apart. We've got refugees fleeing from Mosul. We got families fleeing from the violence in the Iraqi city of Mosul. We've got ISIS fighters standing guard at checkpoints in the northern Iraqi city of Mosul. We could go on, but this is the end of Iraq. So Iraq will not be an active part of the King of the South, because by the time all this is said and done, Iraq is going to be destroyed. Now, here is the Roman Isis, and she's wearing a garment tied with a typical loop. It's a characteristic knot from the time of Hadrian, which was like 138 Christian era. Not that long ago. You want to see Isis? There she is. There's the goddess. That's what's going on. That's who's running this show. Just like you don't want to mess with Iran, because Iran, is run by a great demon, Prince of Persia, very powerful demon there. ISIS goes back to black, and here's Isis in her black robe. This was in Rome. The second, see, this isn't that long ago, 200 AD. There's Isis. She was a real pagan deity. You know, there are demons that represent themselves as gods and goddesses. They appear before people, and they can shape-shift. We're not going to get into that, but you better be aware of that. They can shape-shift, and they can turn back into spots of light. Bear note, demons can turn back into orbs of light when they want to, and they can change their shape. Spirit, we're not going to get into all that, because our topic now is Iraq. But Isis is a very powerful force, a very powerful occult figure. Now, the cities that are under ISIS control are Mosul, Tikrit, well, it looks like Fallujah. Alright, there's also fighting still going on in Fallujah. So ISIS hasn't taken all of Fallujah. They've just taken part of it. And Ramadi, they've only taken part of it. Now Suleiman, they've taken all of Suleiman. There, I'll give you the picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words. The red is as of 4 hours ago. Let's bring this up so the camera can see it. The red are the cities that you're not seeing on your television that ISIS controls. The blue are the ones that they're still fighting for. And they're right at the door of Baghdad. Knocking on the door of Baghdad. And it's a powerful demon that's knocking on the door of Baghdad. Just so you know, you're not dealing with normal forces, you're dealing with principalities. You're dealing with ISIS, a great demon goddess. Now let's tell you more about it. Because here's what happened. Remember I told you at the beginning that I showed you how Obama's handlers, he had started speaking and used the word ISIS in attacking. ISIS is attacking in Iraq. And then his handlers must have put up on the teleprompters, and you can always tell. I don't like watching Barack Obama at all, but I love his technique. He will never look straight in the eye. He'll never look you straight in the eye like I'm looking you in straight in the eye. You know what he'll be doing? He'll be looking to stage right, stage left, stage left, stage right. Why? Why doesn't he look straight ahead? Because there's a teleprompter on stage left and stage right, and he's reading it off. So his handlers put up, I know it, because he stopped using the word ISIS, because guys like me could understand that right away, and some of you Sharpies out there can understand it. So guess what he said? In the middle of his speech, he switched it to ASAT. ASAT. ASAT is attacking in Iraq. And then he changed it to ISET. 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 You know, like a dog sets. Set, set, set. Not ISIS. Well, here's the deal. We have the understanding of what's going on, you know, and even understanding his faux pas, why he changed it to ASET or ISET. Because Isis is the goddess in ancient Egyptian religion, whose worship spread throughout the Greco-Roman world. She was worshipped as the ideal mother and wife, as the patroness of nature and magic. She was powerful. She was the goddess of motherhood, magic, and fertility. She wore a headdress shaped like a throne and with Anak in her hand. You know where you get the symbol of the cross from? Well, from Anak. What is Anak? I haven't got time to tell you, but it's spelled A-N-K-H. Guess who's got a cross in her hand? ISIS! Here's another picture of her. Show you what's really going on. Let's first give you that cross. See that cross? And some people think the cross is Christian. It's a pagan Tau. There's ISIS holding the cross in her hand. There's the throne on her head. See the throne on her head? Remember last week I told you about the cone heads? Hey, out of the truth about the mythology, about the heads, when they had the crossing of the species, they ended up with these giant heads. Remember I told you about the poop and how they're gonna, the man of sin, the alien savior is gonna have this big hat on, just like the poop's hat. You know, what do you call a man with a $5,000 hat? You call him a poop. Well, that's to cover up the cone head. But they also have got the sizes down now after the last, since Egyptian times, 2,000 years, well, 1,800 years for sure. Anyways, back to ISIS here. She's powerful. ISIS is the mother of Horus. And who was Horus? Was the god of war and protection. And Horus's mother was Hathor, H-A-T-H-O-R. Now, the first daughter of Geb, G-E-B, god of the earth, well, she was born in the 4th intercalary day. See, in the typical form of her, Isis was the first daughter of Geb, god of the earth. And look, when I'm telling you these names, these are the mighty men of old. Okay? These are the Nephilim. These are the cross species that rule the earth. Now you're going to see the cuneiform tablets and other things that have these giant kings on that are like 30 feet high with the people coming before them carved into the stone, because these were actual beings. And you get these giant skeletons around that you never hear about them, but those were the Nephilim, but they got the size down. That's why you've got Valiant Thor, who met with Eisenhower in 1954. See, that's an easy way to remember it. Valiant Thor met with Eisenhower in 54. Yeah, they made a deal. Made a deal for technology if they'd let a certain number of Americans be abducted and used in experiments. I'm not going to get into all that. And you new listeners are falling off your chairs right now. But don't worry, don't worry. It'll all be shown to you. The history of the world will be shown to you in the place of safety. We'll have time to go over it one-on-one with you. Okay, so in Isis's typical form, because I'm doing this to show you she's very powerful, and that's what's happening in Iraq right now. The first daughter of Geb, god of the earth, and not N-O-T, goddess of the sky. There's also Sky Father, which you just celebrated, some people just celebrated last Sunday. And she was born in the 4th intercalary day. She married her brother Osiris, and they conceived Horus with him. Isis was instrumental in the resurrection of Osiris when he was murdered by Seth. Remember that one in the Bible? We haven't got time to go over that, but you know, his parts were scattered all over the earth. And the mythology is she used her magical skills. She restored his body to life after gathering up the body parts that had been strewn about the earth by Seth. The point of all this is, you today in 2014 are dealing with the same demons that have always been around. You're dealing with hosts of wickedness in high places. Hosts of wickedness in high places. Now we got a whole bunch of different pictures of Isis when she went through her different changes, but we don't have time. We don't have time to show them all to you as the situation develops. And rats, we're running out of time again. We're running out of time again. Okay, well now you know what's going on in Iraq. Very powerful demon, ISIS, which stands for Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. We don't have time to talk about Syria. Or to get into the King of the South, how that will be. Now, regarding the summer solstice, I have another folder on that, which is today. Do we have time to go over that with popular pagan holidays? Got so much because it ties in with Sky Father's Day. Well, let's put it this way. All the Wiccans gathered at Stonehenge today, because when I was in England, I wanted to go into Stonehenge, but you couldn't go into Stonehenge because it's only open 2 days of the year. On summer solstice, 21st, and winter solstice, December 21st. So I couldn't go in. No one could go in. So the Wiccans are having their midsummer festival today. And this is celebrating the journey of the sun. Because the way the stones are formed, it's actually a stargate. And someday I'll tell you about all the stone circles that are around. From 150,000 years ago, there's like 10,000 stone circles in South Africa. And they're all energy collectors, and they all are interlinked with channels, and they all are interlinked, and the pyramid is a giant energy collector and a giant energy emitter. And we're not going to get into that. We don't have any time for that. But here is the point. You heard it here on the Obedient Church of God, that Isis is a great, powerful deity, and she is leading the Iraqi people in the occult. And indeed, Canada has ISIS, the Immigrant Settlement Integration Services, and it's all lesser magic being performed right in front of you. Now the Ukraine, on the Ukrainian front, they had this peace treaty in order to just slow things down. See, the Ukraine, so you know what's going on there, is very strategic location. You know, the Ukraine borders Russia, and as Ukraine borders Russia, you know, Belarus, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Moldova. Well, all of these countries, you know, all but Moldova, are in the European Union. Now, Russia would like the Ukraine to be a buffer against the West. Now, I can tell you about the European Babylonian beast power. Just give you some scriptures. You're going to have to look it up yourself because we're getting out of time here. Isaiah 13, verse 1. Isaiah 13, 17 to 19. Jeremiah 51, 11. Okay? Now, the land is dominated by the Medes. We'll give you more scripture for you to understand. Isaiah 13, 1, and we just mentioned that. No time to get into that. It gets complicated. Okay, now let's go through one or two more pieces of information while there is still time. We can't talk anymore about the King of the South because this isn't the King of the South being set up. This is, bear note, just so you know what's going on in the world, this is Iraq. Egypt and Syria are going to be destroyed, and they won't be an active part of the King of the South because they're being destroyed right in front of your eyes, but we won't get into that. But since I had told you what Bergoglio said, I want to back it up. He made a Freudian slip on his weekly blessing. Because you know they're all a bunch of homosexuals, and the proof is there. The proof is there. You know, there's a picture of Bergoglio and another priest kissing. All right. The Pope cursed in his weekly blessing. Now, I've got the proof here. It was the week of March 5th, 2014. And I'll cut to the chase because we're out of time. Okay? So, for all the adults, tell the children to leave the room. Tell the children to leave the room. Because he said, and I'll give it to you the way the Italian people understood it. He said, in service of your penis. That's what he said. It's unbelievable. I'll take it right out of the words that he said and the way that the Italians understood it. And it was a Freudian slip. It said, here's the exact quote, the exact sentence. If each of us does not amass riches only for oneself, comma, but half for the service of others, in this example of a dick, of a penis, in this case, this example. Now, the word for example is not kazzo, C-A-Z-Z-O, which means dick. Okay? So there you have Francis. I don't believe it was an error, you know. I don't. Because when you have George Bush pronouncing a Baphomet curse, kite must hit steel, kite must hit steel, kite must hit steel, then you have Bergoglio. That's his name, Bergoglio. And you have him stating, but for the service of your dick. That's what he said. I can't help it. I'm just reporting it. So, these are the true words that are never reported. And you can't find this on the internet anymore because they've taken it down. But I've caught it. I've caught it. So he meant to use the word, let's put it down so that you know, so you can be perfectly clear. Perfectly clear. He meant to use the word in Italian, caso. C-A-S-O. But he used the Italian word for dick. And the word caso is the word for example. But the word instead he used was cazzo. C-A-Z-Z-O. And that means that he said, for the service of your penis, for the service of your dick. So there you go. You have George Bush pronouncing a curse on America. And you have Pope Bergoglio pronouncing a cuss word on his blessing. You heard it first here on the Obedient Church of God. And if you want to get into it, if you have time, I've got a whole analysis of the word cazzo, C-A-Z-Z-O, the Italian word for dick. And I'm not going to spend any more time on it. But I'm here to tell you, we know what we're talking about. We know what these Illuminatis, what the TIS are doing. We know what's going on in the world. And we have a whole much more information to give you next week. And then we'll tell you it's time to get out of Dodge, because we don't have time to show you this, but we got the United States is now the 101st worst place to live in the whole world. You know, we'll just give you some. I'm sorry it has to be that way, but this is a good reason for you to get out, because Nicaragua is ahead of the United States. Brazil is ahead of the United States. Bolivia is ahead of the United States. You're better off in Nicaragua. In Botswana is better off than the United States. Botswana is 32nd. Vietnam is better than the United States. Vietnam is 41. You know, South Korea is better than the United States. It's 47. The United States is now 101st, nearly, you know, last in line for economic and security and safety from the number of homicides. You are watching the death of Ephraim in front of your eyes. You're watching the death of Ephraim in front of your eyes. Now you can be a witness to this. It's important for you to be a witness, because then you can tell all the heavenly hosts who are witnessing this, you can tell all the people in your city, when there will be children and there will be people after the second resurrection and during the 1,000 years, you know, we're going to get a real multiplying effect, because the people that are left, the 10% that are left, because 90% of the earth will be killed. 90% of the earth will be destroyed. So then you're going to have to be repopulating the earth. So what will happen is the people, you know, they'll have 2 children, will have 4, and then 4 will have 8, and 8 will have 16. And then when you get up to like 100 will have 200, 200 will have 400, 400 will have 800, 800 will have 1600. Then you get up to 100,000 will have 200,000. Oh, and by the way, you could have on this earth billions and billions and billions of people. And I can knock out, well, the theory of evolution. If there was a theory of evolution, even accounting for death from disease, epidemics, and starvation, you'd have 100,000 people per square inch on the earth. If you had evolution from Neanderthals. You know, you'd have 100,000 Neanderthals per square inch. It's pretty crowded. Evolution, what a joke. Anyways, we don't have time to go into that one. Back on topic here. We, the obedient Church of God, want you to be in the place of safety. We want you to be sealed, to seal up the law among my disciples. Isaiah 8, verse 16. The sign. You are this sign. Remember, I taught you last week that you're the wave sheaf. You are the 2 wave sheaves, and you'd better be a big, bountiful stalk of grain with giving lots of fruit from your lips to Father. And indeed, you must keep the commandments of God, every jot and seal to be sealed by the law, and the Sabbaths are the sign that only the obedient Church of God is the only one that keeps the Sabbath day around the world. Remember, it's going to be rough sledding ahead. You're going to have to leave Dodge. You're going to have to get out of the United States. It's only going to be a 10th left. Where does that say? Isaiah 6, verse 13. Only 1/10 left. Rough times. And just like Iraq is being destroyed in front of your eyes, so is the United States going to be destroyed. So you're seeing the preliminaries way before the rise of the King of the South, because Iraq, Syria, and Egypt are going to be destroyed, and then the King of the South rallies. You heard it first here, so don't be deceived by your ministers that are telling you that the King of the South is now raising its head. King of the South is not raising its head. Those are just the preliminaries. These countries are going to be smashed before the King of the South forms. Egypt, Iraq, and Iran. We can prove that, but we don't have time. We don't have time for that. I'm sorry, we'll have to save that for next week. Next week we might tell you about the setup of the King of the South. So have faith in God. Obey. Obey every jot and tittle, because the Spirit is given to those who obey. Now, we didn't even have time to tell you more about the thousands of guillotines that are now have been moved to Montana from Georgia. But we did tell you about Dick Armstrong today, and that no matter what happens to me or what happens to you, it fits in perfectly with God's plan and what is best for you and I. So have no fear of man. I gave you that sermon. Have no fear of man and what man can do to you, because you're in the hollow of God's hands. So welcome to God's way of life. Have your safety and protection humbly in the obedient Church of God, because no other denomination is practicing God's Sabbath day around the world, and that is the seal of God on you. And that's the sermon for today. We're totally out of time. Oh, I wish I didn't have to spend time pulling the sheep out of the mud. But so be it. That's what we have to do. So now please rise. I'm going to give another offering of the fruit of our lips to Father. Take your beautiful hymnals. You know, I'm going to have to get our 1934 hymnal up on the internet where the words are more succinct. And I think for next broadcast, I'll try to bring out the original schoolhouse hymnal for you so you can see it. Yes, it's much smaller, but the words, good things come in small packages, and the words are much more succinct. Now, His law is truth and love. Thy law is truth and love. And I'm trying to teach you to cry out to Father with your whole heart. Cry out to Him that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things. Or, whatever it be, you vow to follow His way of life, though He slay you. So with my whole heart, hymn number 91, sing out the sacrifice for your lips and vow with your whole heart that you cry out to Father, so that you can put another bud of grain on your stalk. So you are a fitting sacrifice, for thy law is truth and love. Psalm 119, page number 91.
Before the dawn to break
standing for the closing prayer. Arms raised in worship, palms outstretched, eyes closed in sincerity, head bowed in humility. Almighty, most merciful, loving Father, you who know the end from the beginning, you who have called us before the earth's foundation, strengthen your people in the obedient Church of God. Help us to carry out your mission in truth and love. And love is the keeping of your commandments and raising up our voices so that the other sheep can know your way of life. Help and strengthen us. Protect us in this time of coming tribulation. Help us to be in the right place at the right time. Help us to get the funds to continue to be a witness of the small group getting out your word week by week to the very special sheep that you have called and who have vowed their lives to follow you and only your way and not one jot or tittle that's not in your word, and who have washed their garments in Christ's blood. Father, we thank you for all you've done for us. We thank you for the calling. We vow to follow your every jot and tittle so that we can have Christ's blood applied to us when we slip and fall. So now, Father, please protect us for another week from the state troopers that are all over the highway pulling people over, from the sheriffs, from the county police, from the city police, from the FEMA that's on the highway as they're locking down this country. So, Father, New World Order, they just haven't announced it, but it's here. So protect us so that we can continue to be free to be your servants. So now, Father, we give you all praise and glory for all you've done for us, and all thanks through Yeshua HaMashiach, our soon arriving King of the world. We ask this now. Amen. Another dynamite service. It just keeps going like the ever-ready bunny. Don't know how come we got so much information, but it just is the way it is. Well, in closing, let's see what we can do for you for closing. You know, we're looking forward to the future. Let's see if we can play one of these mornings, because our hope is in Yeshua, and one of these mornings, that's the broadcast, is going to be for today. Let's see what one of these mornings. Hallelujah!
One of these mornings, one of these mornings, I'm going to see Jesus face to face, thanking for his amazing grace, finding him a resting place. One of these mornings, oh yes, well, one of these mornings, gonna see Jesus, said one of these mornings.